Because we don't know how much money is gonna be freed up, but if we do have the grant funding, because this would be completely 100% grant funded if we used it. We probably would hire a male person for the male participants 2 days out of the week. But I do have somebody who's willing to volunteer at least for a short period of time. So I just want the approval now in the event that we are in a position to be able to hire them later.
Any questions? Mr. Undershoots.
So basically, you're just asking for permission that, say, at the end of the year, you've already paid the drug court coordinator, whatever costs you got. You just want pre-permission so that all of a sudden you're not scrambling and you miss the ball on, getting a couple of employees if there's leftover money in the grant.
Correct.
Yes.
Any other questions? Ready to vote? Passed by majority vote, 18.
Thank you.
Resolution number 2. Authorizing Rusk County, Barrett County intergovernmental agreement for ADRC. Need a motion? Got a motion? Second? Got a second? Mr. Jacobs?
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Chairman and County Board Supervisors, Jeremy Jacobs, representing Health and Human Services. Very brief history on this. The intergovernmental agreement is our operating working document for the ADRC of Barron and Rusk County. The brief history was in 2008, we created the multi-county ADRC, and that was Barron, Rusk, and Washburn County. In 2022, at the end of the year, we disbanded that tri-county and created the Barron and Rusk County ADRC as of 1/1/2023. And so this operating agreement is to allow for all the things that you see in your packet. It is essentially training right on down to shared service back and forth and making sure that our ADRC consumers are served within our 2 counties. And so nothing more, nothing less, that is the intergovernmental agreement. The predominant changes that you see in the red, I think you have a document that has all the red lined out things, was just basically removing Washburn County. The other components were just adding some training components and making sure that we have outlines for shared staff between the 2 counties. And so I would appreciate your vote on this to pass this, and we can continue to serve the population in both counties. Any questions?
Any questions?
Oh, sorry, that's your job.
You're fine. Don't worry about it. No questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. You vote. Yes, passed by majority vote.
Thank you, everyone.
Authorizing Rusk County to enter into the settlement agreements for the opioid class action lawsuits with Trevia Pharmaceutical Industries Limited, Allergen Finance LLC, Walgreens Company, Walmart Incorporated, CVS Health Corporation, and CVS Pharmacy Incorporated agreed to the terms of the addendum on the MOU allocating settlement proceeds and authorized entry into the MOU with the Attorney General. A motion and a second to bring that. Got a motion? Got a second?
So this, you may recall approximately 3 years ago, we entered into a class action lawsuit against other pharmaceutical companies, et cetera. We've gotten a couple $100,000 as part of a settlement with those entities. Another class action has been started against these companies named here, and I believe most of the other counties are joining in on this class action lawsuit. I don't know what will come of it. I assume something similar of what happened in the previous litigation, but this is the authorization to authorize us to enter into contracts with that law firm to get us into this class action lawsuit. On the class, I believe, we have to make this authorization by the end of April, to get into the current class. Your other option is if you don't do this, then you're going to have to pursue counsel on your own to, I guess, litigate this. That's what the judge in the previous class action made them do, for those entities or those governmental entities that didn't join the class. So, it's my recommendation that you authorize this resolution for us to join this class.
Any questions? Being none, ready to vote? Oh, sorry.
We all know in this room what the heck is going on in this county with drugs. Hopefully we can take that money and put it someplace which will really do us some good. Hopefully slow this down somewhat, so.
Mr. Brazil.
Any downside to this, Rich?
No, it doesn't cost you anything to do it, you get, no.
Mr. Kudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To enter into this, there's no money to us up front, right?
Right,
It's just that if-
it doesn't cost us anything at all. The great thing or the bad thing is when these $1 million settlements or $1 billion settlements come down, the attorney fees are substantial, so they get them.
From what I gather, it's like 25% of whatever, and then plus their expenses.
Right.
Those expenses are divided out between every county, it's not,
And so,
equal.
there's local government, state government that are in these as well. So the allocation between the state and the local government, I don't know that off the top of my head. The WCA pushed this through, so I was not involved very much in this at all.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Not, you can vote now. Passed by majority vote of 18. Set May of 2023 to 2024 County Board of Supervisors scheduled meeting dates. Motion second. You just wanna discuss it. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on them? No discussion, all in favor, or just vote on it? Passed by majority vote of 18. Update to purchasing policies and financial procedures manual. Got a motion? And a second.
Okay, this is in your packet, Jim Bugby and I worked together on updating the purchasing policy to salute it, financial procedures manual. We're looking to change the threshold from $1,000 to $1,500 for what requires property committee approval prior to purchasing. As well as adding, to the last two sentences, the second to last sentence used to read, no used equipment shall be traded in, disposed of, or sold without property committee approval. We're just adding to the end of that says, with the exception of obsolete or damaged beyond repair electronics as determined by the IT department, so that the IT department can recycle computers, as they see fit without having to take all of that to property before disposing of it. And the last sentence previously read, funds from sold property shall be evaluated and received by the finance department. We're just adding at the end of that, or approved by the property committee, if the property committee already determined, or approved the sale, where the proceeds should go, there's no need for it to come from the finance department.
Ready to? Any questions at all?
I just got one on $300,000 on the highway, that's approved budgetary money, that just says,
Correct,
they
and
can't just
that
decide they're gonna
goes-
spend 300,000.
That goes to the highway committee still, but I mean, the committee's.
But I mean, it's gotta be in the budget before.
Correct.
Any other questions? You vote now. Eighteen yes, that's majority vote. Library planning, County Library Planning Committee, I don't know what that is myself. Randy?
I know the library director had asked, this to be placed on the agenda. I don't really know, the library board has not had any discussion on this. I don't know, Christina is here, you can address, what she thinks needs to be done.
So as some of you know, every 5 years, the libraries in the county have to compile a strategic plan in order to continue to provide services, which is something we obviously want to do. I don't know if anybody's read the statute that this applies to, but, it is actually the responsibility of this board, as laid out in that statute, to appoint that committee. So, what the composition of that looks like is up to this county board, but it's not really something that an individual library board should take on in the county. It should be this county board.
Christina, I'm not aware, this 5-year thing is, I couldn't find any good statutes on that. We've done ones in 2017, I think it was. The previous one was in 1998. So,
And I would
read the
have to,
statutes, and I think maybe, court counsel could, the 5-year plan, I don't know.
and I would have to respectfully disagree on that, because I actually have paperwork from the last county plan that was made in 2017.
We had a plan, yeah, but the need to renew it, I don't think exists.
Christina, I can.
Oh, still there.
If I may, I'm John Thompson, I'm the director of the Fourth Library System. So the last county library plan was created and then it expired at 5-year period of time. So it had a fixed end date to it. So with that fixed end date, then it needs to be renewed because of that fixed end date. The prior plan did not have a fixed end date, but because of the situations changing with the libraries, the plan needed to be updated. So the county board would need to appoint a planning committee to update that plan, and then that planning committee could determine the length of that plan's life. So it could be 3 years, it could be 5 years. You in theory could have a plan that never expires, but that is bad planning in the sense that things change over time and you need to readjust how the county plan looks at how Rusk County serves the residents of the county that are not directly served by one of the 3 public libraries within the county. That also includes residents that would go into adjacent counties, and you'd have to figure out how you're funding that, and that's part of the planning process, but then that also applies under 4312, which is the funding statute.
So could the, I see the statute states that the county library planning committee, it says the county may appoint the county library planning commission or committee. Could they just direct the library board to do this?
So if you had a consolidated county or a county library service, you could, but while you operate a joint library with a city county, it's not a true consolidated library, so the library board for Rusk County Community Library is not the only library board within Rusk County. You have Hawkins and Bruce, and they also have their own individual library boards. So you would, in essence, have to create a county planning committee representing the entire county. That planning committee can contain members from local library boards, it can contain county board supervisors, it could be library directors. There isn't a fixed, appointment in there, it just allows it if there's a county library board that you can appoint that, but that's not really what's here in Rusk County.
Is there a certain size that planning committee is gonna be, do you say?
There isn't a defined number,
As long as it's multiple people, three to
Right.
five.
3 to 5, 5 to 7, whatever the board feels is appropriate.
Is there any, the whole plan, is there anything for us to look at or to read or see how they did it?
The plan should be on file at the county, we have a copy at the library system headquarters, the county doesn't have a copy of it. So basically, it just needs to be updated. There's not a lot of detail that has to go into it. The plan right now contains circulation statistics, that were from when the 2017 plan was put in place. It includes some goals and objectives, and how the libraries are helping serve the residents of this county. That's basically what's in that plan.
Mr. Willingham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems to me we just need to move ahead. I would make a motion that the county board authorize the board chair to appoint a 5-member library planning committee consisting of 3 members from the city-county service area, 1 from Bruce and 1 from Hawkins, and that we ask the directors of the 3 libraries to act as staff to that committee and make recommendations to the board and to the board chair for how individuals that they would recommend that be appointed.
Lois?
I was wondering, will Bruce have to agree to this and Hawkins?
The-
I can speak to that.
They-
I've already spoken to, both of the directors from each of those libraries, and they're willing, well, more than willing to help with that.
So we just have a point of order that, Mr. Willingham made a motion, and that we need a second, but, I think you need to restate your motion to get a second.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I said you made a motion that nobody seconded, we need a second to do that. So I guess if you would restate your motion one more time, as nobody.
Okay, the motion is to authorize the county board chairman to appoint a 5-member library planning committee.
Okay.
Consisting of 3 members from the county, city libraries constituents, 1 from Bruce and 1 from Hawkins. And that we ask the directors of the 3 libraries to be staff to that committee, and we ask the individual library boards to make recommendations for who, persons to serve on. And bring those names to be appointed approved by the board at the next meeting.
And again, I think you're, duplicative or not necessary for the staff to be the staff of the committee. If we can just do, here's what I have, motion to direct the county board chair to appoint a 5-member planning committee with 3 members of the committee consisting of the Rusk County City Library Committee, one member from the Village of Bruce Library Board, and one member from the Village of Hawkins Library Board. Is that tolerable?
Yeah, I do think that we should ask those three boards to make recommendations as to who those individuals should be.
Okay.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion, yeah.
Any other discussion?
So, we have a motion by, Willingham, a second by Hanson, to direct the county board chair to appoint a 5-member library planning committee with 3 members of the committee consisting of county, city, library board members, 1 member from the Village of Bruce Library Board, and 1 member from the Village of Hawkins Library Board.
Any other questions? Mr. Kudo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this acceptable for you then? Is this basically
Yeah,
what
that's
you're
fine.
looking for?
That'll work.
Yep.
And I can help the committee as needed as well.
Okay.
Do you want me to do that?
What do you want? Mr. Undershoots?
Just a thought, do we want all 5 members to be part of the library board, or do we wanna get somebody from like the public that maybe just is a library user rather than, all 5 of them already on library committees?
Any other questions? Vote on machine? You can vote now. Oh, sorry. Mr. Taylor.
The plan has to come back to this board for approval. What if the board, are they able to make a change, or if they see something they don't like?
Well, yeah, so the planning committee would put a plan together. They would have to hold a public hearing on that plan prior to it passing. So if there were concerns about the plan, it would be best to express those during that public hearing phase. That's a requirement of statute. And then it could go back to the planning committee for revision and then brought back to the county board for approval.
Any other questions? If not, you can vote now. That's by majority vote, 16-1.
Yeah, the housing authority, we just had a meeting yesterday. I don't have a lot to report, other than things have really not gotten any better out there. We're still running at a deficit. Our biggest problem is the rent revenue. It's the only source of revenue that the housing authority has, is rent. Our managers are looking into, working with rural development and HUD to try to get that rent up. Rural development has agreed that would, something that would work, and they're willing to do that. The only problem is, rural development and HUD have joint control of every building. So, rural development has 12 units, 12 apartments, HUD has 36, and HUD is not anxious to raise the rent. So, and when I say raise the rent, the tenants themselves pay 30% of their income for their amount of rent. And the total amount of rent is set by either rural development or HUD. And they would make up the difference. So, say say a tenant is paying $300 and the rent is $600, either HUD or rural development would make up that 300. So that's where the problem comes in. Our utilities are running so high, and so there's not enough rent money coming in. So we were, what, about 32,000 behind. Now, rural development is willing to come in and with some money, not as a grant, but what they would do is add that money to the existing loan. There's an existing loan there that's been there ever since the buildings were put up in mid-70s somewhere. That loan is still at is now at 202,000. So they would add that money, that amount of money to that loan amount, which would put us in default, I think is what they said. So, we do have a call, with rural development and HUD on Monday the 3rd. So, try to work out some things and try to keep these housing units intact. Anything else, Mike, that you can think of, so?
Pretty well sums it up. We'll have a lot more information maybe at the April meeting, because we'll have that conference call on Monday.
Just keeping you aware of, what's going on with here, so. But ever since COVID, costs are higher, and if you stop to think, we've got 5 different locations. It's 35 miles from Weyerhaeuser to Hawkins, another 25 miles to Sheldon, Sheldon to Weyerhaeuser is 35 miles. So when you get guys that have to go from place to place to shovel snow, fix something, your costs kind of run up high. Those maintenance people are getting $15 an hour, so they're not really overpaid. So doing the best that they can. So that's about all I have right now.
What is excuse me, yeah. I would like to add too that, we have 48 units. If all 48 units were rented, I did the calculations on it, if they were rented full all the time, 100%, we would still not meet our expectations of our monthly billings. So that's where we have to have HUD and, those folks buy into it to raise the rent, and they actually increase their share of what they pay, not the people who rent the units, but HUD, and, they would have to increase their share. But other than that, if we had all 48 units rented, we would still be running in the red because of the utilities. So it's quite a project.
Mr. Schmidt?
Just a question, what would happen if you took the loan and went into default? Does that mean that they would foreclose, or?
If we took the loan,
Right, and they added it to the loan, your existing loan, you said it would go into default?
well, I guess.
So the way they said it is that, so every month out of the voucher payments that the housing authority gets from rural development, they take money off the top to apply towards the mortgage. And so they would continue taking that same amount off the top, except they would apply it first to the advance and not the mortgage. So that's what would put them in default. So once that advance was paid off, then they'd be making payments on the mortgage again.
Are they still struggling with that dinosaur fuel oil system in Sheldon?
Yeah.
That's gotta be one of the expenses.
These buildings are, getting close to 50 years old, and the heating elements the heating units are the originals. Yeah, an oil-fired dinosaur over at Sheldon.
Ms. Schutz?
The Rusk County Housing Authority, now, that's not part of Rusk County, that's not part of the government, right? That's a separate entity, they're not involved with us at all, so that's
Right.
their own budgets and board.
Housing Authority is a separate entity. It was originated by the county board, but, it's a unit by itself, so.
Okay, so it's not part of Rusk County's responsibility or anything?
Right.
Financially.
Right.
Mr. Willingham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Randy, are you expected to pay for, like, talking about obsolete heating system, So the housing authority has to pay for a replacement of those out of the revenues. I couldn't give you any broad details, but, I know that, Indian Head, the Action Agency has, over the years has owned a substantial number of rental units, similar to the ones that the county has, funded by similar grants from HUD and et cetera. A couple of years ago, we got a grant from the Wisconsin Department of Administration. And I think it was about $40,000 to replace, to have an inventory of furnaces, to replace furnaces in rental units. Most of our rental units were duplexes, but still something that you might wanna talk to Jennifer out at Indian Head and see if you could, if that's a possibility.
I think that's that grant that, Jeff was talking about yesterday, the 4%, 9%, that they've got applications in the works for that.
Okay, and I should add too, that we did get, a grant of $40,000, and that was from WEDA, and that would be specifically for new flooring. Some of those buildings are, it was the, 50 years, it was the original carpeting in there, wrinkled up so that, and 9 units, that was all replaced, so.
We've never been an escalator clause, has there, for utilities? Has there ever been an escalator clause in there for utilities?
They're working on it. The problem is that they're not, each unit's not metered separately for heat because it's a central furnace.
Well, I
So,
understand. That's part of the trouble, is that they're all hooked off on, they're all heated off of one common source.
Yeah.
So they're not being billed according to the individuals that are occupying these units. We can separate that out as according to the heating system now.
yeah, they're working on potentially getting a utility allowance because their utilities are not in line with, what other housing authorities have because of that, the central heat.
Any other questions, comments? This is a presentation. Okay, thank you, Rick. Visitor center wage increase to allow for Saturday hours. I got a motion. Got a motion, second.
So I think the actual motion would be a motion to increase the visitor center hours on Saturday. They're removing the wage increase from this motion. So again, the motion should be just to increase the visitor center's hours to allow for Saturday hours.
So the tourism committee is recommending that we add Saturday hours to our visitor center. We have had them kind of on and off in the past. The thought behind that is that most of our tourists are coming through on the weekends and that our visitor center should be open. So we are asking the board to approve between Memorial Weekend through Leave It to Rusk Weekend, the hours of 9 to 1.
Any questions?
That's just the same pay rate?
As of now, yes.
And that's just on, is it Saturday and Sunday or Saturday?
Just Saturday.
Lois?
I thought the committee decided for a time and a half on Saturday.
If you are going to push for a overall wage increase, we would rather do that than approve time and a half right now at their current pay rate, because that would be more difficult to budget for if in a month we give raises.
Any other questions? If not, we vote now. Passed by majority vote, 18 yes. use of Rusk County Hospital Nursing Home Building and Marshall Clinic Building after termination of Marshall Clinic lease with Rusk County.
Well, I think at this juncture, if you don't have any objection, we'll go through the RFP responses, first, and then we'll go into that. I believe yesterday at noon, the, RFP responses were due back to the county. I believe we only had one, and I believe that got emailed out yesterday afternoon or evening. What?
I didn't get it till Saturday.
Oh, okay, in any event, we can talk about it now. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at it. I know the public hasn't. We also have the hospital nursing home issues. Because this RFP was authorized or initiated approximately 2 months ago, because it did not impact the hospital leaving the nursing home, we only have one, I guess, option if the county chooses not to demolish it. Due to the fact that the hospital and nursing home has been on the agenda for the past 14 months, I think it would be prudent to discuss the RFP and to maybe make an ultimate decision on what you guys wanna do with the nursing home, post Marshfield termination at a separate meeting, initiated just for that purpose, to, post that so that the public can come and removes any argument of, you know, you put this on here for 14 months to put us to sleep, and then, made the decision unbeknown to the rest of the county. That's my suggestion. We don't have to, we can talk about it now. Again, I don't think many people have seen it over 24 hours, so that's my suggestion and my proposal to do this. Marshfield is planning on vacating the property at the end of April, so again, my suggestion would be to have a special meeting in the next week or two. We missed this week's paper, so my suggestion would be in 2 weeks, so then it can make next week's paper to give anybody who wants to give their opinion the opportunity to do so.
Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, I did read that proposal, and I know something, question popped in my mind right away, on the cost or the price that they offered, it was, an amount of money for land.
Mm-hmm.
How much land? Does it go all the way from the river to the street, or is it, the land under the building, or the parking lot, or, we don't know that, so they don't really spell that out in there.
And again, we didn't ask for that. This was to throw out any lines to see what we could bring back. This is the only one we have, so, in that proposal, they estimate the cost of demolition too, so not saying that, you'll demo it or not demo it, but you do have the funds from Marshfield there. They're proposing in their proposal, their costs are 2 million, or 3.3 million, I'm sorry, for the environmental and other costs associated with the potential demo or renovation, but.
Any other questions?
Will it be
Mr.
possible?
Kudo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The way I read that, I didn't get through all of it, but the way I read it is that they're basically offering $80,000 for the land.
Their proposal was correct to do that, and then they, as part of this proposal, are committing to doing the renovations or the demo and the construction for the residential housing units.
Okay, but now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was my understanding there's roughly 7 acres there? Is that close to?
That sounds in the wheelhouse, yes.
Okay, and we're talking about prime commercial property on the riverfront for 7 acres for $80,000. I'm just saying. I think that's something that we need to consider, definitely, because that seems extremely low for that.
Mr. Willingham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know, you know, there's a lot of things to talk about. If we end up demolishing the building ourselves, using up all the reserve fund, or the wind down fund, plus, you know, so much more that would take to do that, are we gonna get our money back if we sell it for more than what they're offering? And I'm assuming that their offer is also negotiable. So, you know, I think we should, make a decision based on first proposal, so. I would, I wanted to ask the question whether we would have the firm that's made the offer come to that meeting that you talked about and discuss their offer so that they can answer questions, I'm sure. I just sort of breezed through it a little bit last night, and, you know, I think all of us are probably gonna have questions to ask them, what some of the specifics are, so that.
I don't have a problem, we can reach out to them when you set the date and see if they would send somebody up here.
Just makes sense that we would expedite the process if we have questions that we don't have to, you know, mail it to them and then ask if they answer, they could be there and answer in person, so that's why.
Anyone else wish to speak? Mr. Anderson?
Can we go, I mean, we don't have to make a choice in, which I agree with, but we can still pursue both options at this point, cause we can still set the ball in motion for surveying and or remediation, and if the deal falls through, then we're not losing time. Whereas if we remediate it, and if we remediate the asbestos, either way, somebody's gotta do it, and then if the deal does go through, then they're budget that amount of money, and we could charge them, and then we could at least keep both balls rolling. Does that make sense, or is that?
I don't think that remediation ball stopped rolling. I do not believe they're able to get in there until May.
Yep.
Once they're out, and my plan would be to have this meeting, you know, second week in April or third week or whatever, it's your calendar.
Any other comments, questions?
Then if not, I mean, I guess I would, propose and my thought.
Well, the second week of April is zoning, emergency services, HHS, property. Only third week.
Right.
Okay.
Happens on Friday.
So, third week, so the week of the 17th?
Highway is Monday, finance is Tuesday, forestry is Wednesday.
Propose an evening meeting or a daytime meeting?
I was thinking afternoon.
Tourism and Trails End, I think, are the 18th of June. So, Monday afternoon?
Either that or Thursday afternoon.
Yes,
And when?
Thursday afternoon.
Oh, okay.
I think, Rich, I'd rather have a meeting with the original people that work there.
Okay.
5 o'clock or something like that, that might work better for the people that work.
Well, then
Then we could throw it up.
The 18th? Oh. At 5 o'clock? Oh, okay.
Finance that day.
Well, we could try to move towards it. We can move towards it. We can move it if you choose.
Or if you're doing it in the evening, you can come back to the second week.
That's what I just said, so.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm glad somebody backed me on it.
So the 11th?
We've got land information at 3. Land information zoning is at 3 on the 11th.
Unfortunately, that meeting could be changed, except if there's hearings. Notices have already gone out for the hearings, so I.
Six, it only takes
It shouldn't take that long, really.
less than an hour.
For what?
12, will that work for anybody, everybody? Gary, what about you, will it work for you?
What time?
John, speak up.
Okay.
The 12th.
12?
The Wednesday.
It won't work for you?
There's a killing a whole week for me.
What emergency services?
I got mine in water review.
Wednesday the 12th.
12 don't work for John.
I mean, otherwise, if the 25th, that's a day meeting, right?
We can do a night, let's just start it the 25th.
Go home for that.
You want us to move that tonight? You want us to move that tonight? April meeting.
Makes no difference to me. I don't know that you're gonna get everybody to be there, but again, it's your guys' meeting.
Does anyone have objections to Monday the 10th at 5 p.m.?
It is Easter Monday.
10th at 5 p.m.
Any objections?
John?
Works for me. Monday's a good day for me.
Five?
Monday at 5.
Want that in a motion?
We don't need that emotion.
We're not doing.
Monday, April 10th at 5 p.m.
Monday the 10th.
Monday the 10th, 5 p.m.
So then it's gonna be the
Monday the 5th at 10.
April 10th at 5 o'clock, right? Everybody hear that?
Are you changing the regular county board meeting on the 25th
To the evening, yes.
to 7
7.
instead of 9 in the morning?
Yep. Okay, that's it.
So then, based upon you guys moving that to the 10th, the first two closed sessions, there's no, need for. So then it's just the last closed session. On there, so I don't know if you wanna read that.
Okay, good.
Okay, moving into closed session. Sale of county-owned properties, Wisconsin stats, 19.85 or 1/3 deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, investing in a public fund, or conducting other specified public business, whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. You know, we got a motion and a second, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there any announcements? If there's no announcements, a motion? There's no other announcements or anything else, a motion adjourned would be in order.
Come on.
Second? Where's your?